Well, stocks have recovered all the ground lost since the collapse of Lehman Brothers, but the outlook remains, you could say, a bit cloudy. We're joined this morning over the phone by Chairman, co-founder, and CEO of W.L. Ross & Company, Wilbur Ross. Good morning, Wilbur. Great to have you back on with us.
Good to be on, Betty.
So we've had this retracement. Seems like the bulls are feeling good, or they're in place. Do you feel good about the markets?
I'm starting to feel better about the economy and therefore somewhat better about the market itself. I think that the QE2 that was put in will add a fraction of a percent to economic growth next year. And so that removes what lingering danger there might have been of a double dip of recession.
Right.
I think the other consequence of the QE2, though, is that it pushed up all kinds of asset prices.
Right.
Certainly stocks and commodities both benefited from it.
Right, and so we had a year in which basically, as you're saying, all asset prices rose. So for 2011, then, Wilbur, are we setting ourselves up for some type of disappointment?
Well, I think the question really is top-line growth in the economy and in corporate America. I think relatively small gains in top line will produce relatively large gains in bottom line because companies have got their personnel costs very well under control. They have inventories very well under control, and the capital costs have come down. So it shouldn't take too much in top line growth for there to be pretty good bottom line.
Good bottom line growth, but is that going to translate? I mean, for this year so far, we've had a 12% run up in the S&P. Is that going to translate into the same double-digit gains for the markets next year?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think there's a fair amount of optimism that's now been built in. And so I think the real question is, as we get out through the year, will it become clear that we really are on the road to a decent recovery, or will it be limping along at a 2+% pace of economic growth?
Then, Wilbur, for you, who's always looking for good deals out in the markets, then does that push up the valuations for companies, and therefore you feel this need that you're going to have to make some more deals in 2011 to capture that?
Well, as you know, we mainly deal in distressed companies, and there seem to be plenty of those remaining because the recovery, while it's going on, is not gigantic, and therefore some segments are still in difficulty. Like
where? Where exactly?
Well, for example, there's still dislocation in many parts of the financial services sector, particularly in Europe. And even in America, there are still some 800 banks on the FDIC's watch list, despite the fact that hundreds of banks have already been taken over because they had failed. So at the regional bank level, the crisis is by no means ended.
Right. So then what's your next target, Wilbur? Can you give us any names?
Well, we have been bidding, as I think you're aware, on a very large savings bank in Ireland.
Yes.
That's probably the largest single project that we're in right now. We also have been investing in the shale gas companies. We filed a 13D on a company called XCO.
But that's not financial services, so that's unusual for you.
No, that's another sector.
Right.
And the thing in shale gas is that we have found so much of it in Texas, in Louisiana, in Wyoming, and in Pennsylvania that for the moment there's a glut of natural gas.
Right.
The price of natural gas is one of the few commodities that's come down enormously from the mid-teens down to about $4 an MCF.
Yes.
And so
therefore, right. So therefore, there's the opportunity. But Wilbur, just in time remaining, though, I want to ask you about that Irish bank bid because you mentioned it's the Educational Bank of Savings. What's going on with it so far? I mean, what's the status? I know the deadline for the sale is, I think, like January 17th or something.
Well, there is a sale process that's been underway for quite a while. There's been consultation between the Irish government and the European Union, and we're in the process of trying to put in a final bid, and then very shortly we hope that they will come to a conclusion.
And how much money are you putting in?
Well, it's quite a large transaction. The Irish government has put in hundreds of millions of euros.
Right.
And so the real question is how much more do we put in and how much, if any, do they leave in?
Okay, so that's not determined yet. That's what I'm hearing then. Okay.
No.
Wilbur, thank you so much. We're going to leave it there. Wilbur Ross, the chairman, co-founder, and CEO of W.L. Ross and Company.